Welcome to Content Disrupted, bold takes on brand marketing. I'm your host, Casey Noble, and together we'll explore what it takes to excel in brand marketing at one of the most exciting and disruptive times in industry history. Welcome back to Content Disrupted. Joining us today is award-winning brand and marketing executive Doug Zarkin. Doug's known for driving marketing transformation at some of the world's most iconic brands, including Avon, Victoria's Secret, CK Jeans, Baby Fat. I mean, the list goes on and on. So most recently, as CMO of Pearl Vision, he actually orchestrated a brand rejuvenation effort that was so successful, it's now a Harvard Business School case study. And now he has a new book coming out. It's Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. So Doug, welcome to the show. We're excited to hear about the book and everything you've got going on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. With that introduction, I wish my father still had an understanding of what I do. He still doesn't.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you said that because, I love to ask marketers this question of how do you explain what you do to friends and family? Because I end up into this whole history of publishing and, digital and do people get it? How do you explain what you do?
So, my dad lives in Del Boca Vista Phase 3, literally down in Florida. And, when he plays golf with his friends, they always talk about their son, the doctor, their son, the lawyer. And, he explains that my son is a chief marketing officer. And what I've tried to get him to understand is my responsibility is really to build businesses and build brands. And I do that through figuring out how to motivate the consumer to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it. In an altruistic way, in a respectful and humility, but that's essentially the purpose of marketing.
And especially now, you can say best-selling author, add that to the list.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully we, moving your brand out of the friend zone, a modern day guide to strengthening your brand's value equation, has been sort of how I spent my summer. I've been thinking about writing a book for a few years and really never had the time to sit down and do it. But available, first week in October at Amazon. You can find out more information about the book by going to dougzarkin.com. And I think, by the time this airs, we'll have a link up to Amazon to buy the book directly.
And I want to talk to you about the book. So as you were writing this, you mentioned you kind of spent the summer doing this. I know this was after kind of your exit from so many years, driving real transformation at Pearl Vision. I mean, you had the award-winning campaign, the Small Moments campaign that was, incredibly well recognized. And I was wondering, as you wrote this, why did it feel so important to get, the message out there? And what do you really want or hope that marketers reading the book are able to take away from it?
So, the nature of marketing is always trying to drive passion internally, as well as obviously use that passion to create meaningful connections with consumers. And a big part of what I love to do as a human being is to teach, to train, to mentor. And I'm involved in several mentoring programs like Adweek's Executive Mentoring Program. I volunteer through the Association of National Advertisers Education Foundation, where I get a chance to teach at colleges across the country. And I always found myself, after a meeting or after a presentation, thinking through, how can I bring this to life in a way that could benefit more than just the immediate folks in the room? My team used to talk to me about Dougisms, phrases and sayings that would take the complexity of marketing and make it simple, which is a big responsibility, especially when you're leading a franchise brand. And so I've been toying for a couple of years about trying to put this down on paper. And then, when I made the decision to step away from Pearl, I realized now was the right time. And so ironically, it took me about 15 minutes to write the outline for the book and a good 3 months to actually complete first draft, and excited to kind of see how this all comes together. More importantly, excited to get feedback from, young people in their career, folks coming out of college or graduate school, or anybody really looking for a little bit of a slightly different way and set of constructs to process the challenge that we're all facing in today's competitive landscape of, how to create brand love. It's not enough for a brand just to have a friendship with a consumer. It used to be, but in today's landscape where a brand can be created and launched quicker than ever before, and there are more direct to consumer platforms available than ever before, to really create a sustained business success model with a consumer, you have to create a passionate relationship. And so the notion of moving beyond friendship into a deep brand love is really what this book hopefully provides some tools and constructs to think about how to use.
I think that's awesome. And, you picked such an apt metaphor and to put it in really powerful terms. I mean, you talk about passion, right? But it really is. It's like when you are able to, captivate customers truly and do that consistently. I feel like it's not just about, there's so much about capturing the immediate clicks. It's about that first moment or one asset, and making sure that that's successful. But it's really a whole ecosystem that you have to be thinking about and delivering like a consistent, really compelling narrative all the time in order to trigger that kind of relationship with your customer. What can you unpack a little bit, the sort of challenge in the market dynamics that you think are at play here, and sort of the difference between like how to market successfully today versus, when you were first agency side, really kind of starting out your career?
Today's landscape, the choices and options that are available to marketers are more robust than ever. That's an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage because back when I started out in my career, you had, fundamental cable television, you had print, you had out of home, and you had, terrestrial radio. And you had a finite set of tools, which really put the onus on developing amazing creative, which was a really good thing. As the world got more sophisticated and a digital ecosystem became prevalent, brands got a little sloppy and used targeting as a way to perhaps make up for communication that really didn't strike that human chord. Today, I believe more than ever that consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. And that kind of speaks to the notion of creating brand love. And so just because you can micro target an audience at almost the zip code level, actually at the zip code level, doesn't mean that your messaging is crap. And I think today's marketer has to balance the micro nature of planning and buying that exists in almost every channel, from streaming television to display to paid search, alongside having really good damn creative that connects the human truth of your target audience and your brand truth and kind of finds that intersection. That is more difficult than ever. And that's really something that I talk about in the book and provide some things to think about and ways to process, and make good, smart choices that are relative to the challenges of your business. The good news in marketing, there's no right way to do it and there's no wrong way. It's just about your way, a way. And that's what I'm trying to do in the book is provide some guidance to help you figure out the right way for you in your career and you in your role to find those connection opportunities with your consumer.
That's a really liberating concept, I think, is that you don't have to think there's a right way and a wrong way. And, you have sort of coined this concept in marketing of the think human approach. I think I've heard you refer to it, which is another, like a brilliant distillation, right?
I was really inspired by the movie Jerry Maguire. So if you remember, Tom Cruise's movie Jerry Maguire, when Jerry writes the manifesto, stays up all night, maybe he was on a ketamine high. I don't really know, but, comes up with this premise of, less clients, greater emphasis, better service, less money. Strip out the less money thing, because I actually don't think it's true. I actually think if you can, the principle of thinking human really comes down to recognizing, number one, your audience isn't a set of data points on an Excel chart. It's a set of emotions and feelings, much like a brand is. The second thing is from a philosophy of how you engage with a customer. If you take the notion that every customer is your only customer, you're going to do the right thing when nobody's looking. And there are so many successful case studies of brands that embody it. Brands like the Ritz-Carlton that empower everyone from their housekeeping staff to their front desk staff to make something right with a customer, a guest, if they see it incorrectly, without having to escalate it 10 levels or wait for a GM to sign off on it. That empowerment to do the right thing for a human being to ensure that they've had an amazing experience is really the premise of what thinking human is. And as a leader, the idea of thinking human is recognizing that every member of your team has a movie going on in their head. It's not Jerry Maguire per se. It could be a comedy. It could be an action adventure. It could be a tragedy. It could be a love story. And just like you and I are talking right now and you're getting a sense of my life in my home office, we have a unique pathway into the lives of our team members through, hybrid and remote working. And it gives you a better sense of the people that power the brand. And as a leader, you have to take stock of that and figuring out how to really galvanize the group behind a common cause and get the best performance out of them while them enjoying the ride.
I love that idea of the people being the power behind the brand. It's so true. And so, are there any specific ways that you have, or activities that you've done with team members to sort of galvanize them around this concept? And then, also in sort of making this a unified approach and getting the whole brand and other execs behind the vision, like how does that messaging differ as like the leader of the marketing vision and the brand vision? How are you communicating to your C-suite peers to get everybody on board? And then how are you galvanizing your team like day to day?
So, the team is the most important thing. As Bo Schembechler, the famous head coach at University of Michigan football said, the team. For me, the core of how you begin that process is by being vulnerable as a leader. They are your family. And so I expose them to my family, not literally, I don't have them running on camera doing a Zoom call, but, we begin every status call with, how was your weekend? All right, somebody tell me something funny that happened, and sharing the good, the bad, the pain, the joy with your team as people allows them to become invested in you as a person. Yes, we do team outings. And, for a while we did this thing called Mixtape Monday, where a member of the team would pick a song for the week that we would play at a status meeting. And it was just a fun way to kind of get a sense of people's musical tastes. But the tenor and tone of how you conduct yourself in meetings really is the essence of thinking human when it comes to being a leader. In terms of the C-suite, a brand positioning is more than just the North Star for your marketing and communications. It's really the North Star for your brand. And it's the behaviors that support it. And I think part of the role of a chief brand officer, chief marketing officer, is to ensure that is front and center in every major meeting and every major discussion, always bringing things back to how does this pay off our customer? How does this pay off our brand positioning? There are sort of three things that you do. You ask yourself, is something on brief? Is it on brand? And then do you like it? The do you like it is completely subjective. The on brand should be completely objective, as should the on brief. So it really takes a lot of the guesswork out and focuses the discussion more on the how, not just the what. And look, if you behave in how you go about your goals as a human being with passion, with purpose, and celebrate that progress along the way, then inevitably you're going to have a much better output, and you're going to convey the kind of person that you want to be and the kind of leader that you are.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'm hearing a lot of, the essence of, leading by example, but also like leading by making sure everyone is asking the right questions, that you're asking the right questions, sort of orienting the organization around that. So in that spirit, I wanted to talk to you about like really getting a great sense of the customer that you're trying to reach. Right now, I feel like there's kind of this debate, almost like the performance marketing, like brand marketing, brand storytelling debate around like personas versus like audience and segmentation. Like, have marketers gotten too like persona focused? Do you think personas are actually kind of an unhealthy exercise in the way that they've traditionally been built? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
You can't ignore relevant data points when it comes to looking at, some of the demographics, gender, et cetera, that are using your product or service. You can't ignore it. You'd be kind of an idiot if you did. But you have to be thinking emotions, attitudes, feelings, and perception, values. I'm a big fan of the archetypes. I think painting a picture of your target consumer, their lifestyle, helps you to evaluate choices, especially when it comes to media and relationships, better than a set of data points are. Just because something ticks off the data box doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision for the brand. Because again, you want to put things through the human lens. A decision that looks good on paper that doesn't factor the human side of the equation may not pay out the kind of results that you think. So for me, at the very least, when I go about building a marketing plan, I always ask myself, who is the target? What are they on paper? What's their driver's license say per se? And then more importantly, from a lifestyle perspective, that's how you really can break through the clutter, is by taking that kind of all points of contact approach that you get through truly understanding the world and the challenges that they're living in.
And What do you think are some of the things you haven't already mentioned that sort of are putting brands in the friend zone today, or making them sort of like either getting them stuck or even like blinding
Yeah.
them to the fact that they are there? Like, how do you trigger that realization? What's
So
going on?
this one's controversial, but I'll throw it out. I think an over-reliance on data is one of the
Mm,
biggest hurdles because data does not make decisions for the modern day marketer. Modern day marketers use data to help make decisions. And the reason is because data is only as good as the questions that you ask. How do you know what questions to ask? You get that through really understanding your brand. That means shutting up and listening. That means being insatiably curious. That means if you are a brand that has a front line, whether that's virtual in terms of e-com or actual physical brick and mortar, get your ass and work with them. You're talking to one of the few men that can proudly say, not because it's fun to torture my 15-year-old daughter with this fact, I was an Avon lady. When I worked at Avon, I spent the first 6 weeks out in the field selling lip gloss because it helped ground me in the truths of the brand and the business and the values. It helped me understand better the data that was being presented to me about the experience. And I think that's so true in any business. The most important tool in your toolbox as a marketer are your frontline associates. They are
mhm.
a living, breathing embodiment of your brand. Brands that don't invest in training, that don't treat their associates with the reverence that they should, it doesn't matter how good your advertising is. If it falls down in execution at the front line, it's not going to be a good thing. You're not going to get great results. So long way of saying that I think not understanding how to properly use data is probably the biggest, followed by a real lack of process for understanding how to really innovate. Not every idea is a good one. I know that's an unpopular opinion, especially in the world of brainstorming, but it
Oh
is
yeah.
true. Not every brand needs an app. Think about how many apps we have on our phone that we barely use. Think about the amount of money and time and thought and arguments that went into building said app. It sits on your phone, you use it once a year, twice a year. Why do you need it? You probably
Mhm.
don't. So factoring out, and there's a chapter in the book, not to hawk the book too much, but there's an entire chapter in the book that provides a construct for how to really think of innovation. Because I do think that there's such a pressure to think about marketing as fear of missing out. Fear of missing out is
Mm.
not a marketing strategy. You really have to think about how you're going to process through opportunities that may exist and force rank them and evaluate them and then figure out if it's even worthwhile to do.
Yeah. So, don't do something if you can't validate your customer is actually going to value that thing. And if you aren't going to do it well, right? I feel like there's also this issue of folks who are just chasing too many shiny objects at
Yeah.
once, is just prevalent in marketing. So it's really about having leaders who can help everybody focus. And so, you've worked at some major iconic brands, especially, fashion and retail. What is sort of your advice for the marketer who's starting out at a brand new brand, a startup, or a brand that's less well known, where like the idea of brand, it's like,
Yeah.
can they expect to become a brand? Like, how do you build that sort of from the ground up? What would be your advice to them?
I like to use the phrase sell more chicken. And here's what I mean by it. Okay. If you are a company that has launched a product, let's say a chicken product, let's say you're a startup QSR business and you're known for your chicken fingers. When it comes to building that product into a brand, the place to go is not to try to sell pizza. It's to sell different iterations of chicken. Okay. So if you were selling chicken fingers, maybe you start selling roasted chicken. Maybe you start selling chicken sandwiches. Sell more chicken is really the premise of go narrow and deep. You don't have the luxury in today's landscape of simply innovating for the sake of innovation and thinking, well, you know what, they'll give us a shot. Too many choices and options, too many micro Instagram brands, too many influencer brands out there. You're never going to have enough marketing money to compete in trying to schlock something that's off brand. Focus on going narrow and deep, master your craft, build concentric circles around it. And again, any piece of innovation, most importantly, you have to ask yourself, is it on brand? If you're a
Mm.
company that specializes in delivering the most tasty chicken, is selling pizza on brand? You may find a way to say it is. I don't think it is. So I think don't try to be everything to everybody. Be something amazing to someone. That's how you create brand love. Friendship is like, they're okay. They do a little of this. They're okay. They're fine. I can hang out with them every once in a while. Love means that you can't live without them.
Mm-hmm.
So really master your craft.
I love that, because it's sort of like, you have to make sure that they can understand who you are
Sure.
on just as deep of a level in order to evaluate even, whether they want to be in love with you, right? And then make yourself lovable to that one person. Yeah.
And look, this isn't saying that there may not come a time and a place where you can start selling pizza. But if you're an incubating brand, if you're an entrepreneur who's starting something, really understand that you've begun to create a relationship with your consumer based on the specific product or category that you're in. Nail that product and category. More colors, different fabrics. If you're in the fashion world, you don't have to feel the need to do something outside of your current competency immediately. Because if you're a small brand, you don't really have that much of a failure tolerance because you don't have the capital.
That makes
and that's just
sense.
An opinion. There's 20 other opinions that'll give you a different way. That's just the way I think about things.
I was wondering if you could walk us through a little bit of a, concrete example from your experience where you led a transformation effort that was really successful in taking a brand that was sort of in the friend zone, and putting them into like next level of differentiation.
Pearl is the best example. When I joined the business in 2012, the brand had 5 different brand positionings over an 8-year period. And while the brand had incredible name recognition, it lacked educated brand awareness and it lacked brand love. The business was really building itself year after year over really aggressive discountings. Buy one, get one free had been in the system for 2 decades. And that's not to say that offering an incentive isn't necessary in a competitive category like eyewear. But the brand value equation, which I summarize as value equals experience as your numerator divided by price as your denominator, was so heavily weighted to the denominator, getting that as low as possible, that we were really missing out on the opportunity to create brand love through a quality of care that really existed, but wasn't being leveraged, wasn't being showcased, wasn't being prioritized. And so the Small Moments campaign, which I appreciate your thoughts on earlier, was really about reconfiguring the brand value equation to emphasize quality of care. If we could deliver an amazing patient experience from the exam room to the retail floor, we didn't need to be aggressively discounting in order to have a positive brand value equation. And whether you're making 50,000, 500,000, or 5 million a year, everybody wants value from the brands in which they invested. And so over the 11-year period, we were able to eliminate buy one, get one free, really drive up our quality of care perception so that right now Pearl is number 1 on Google when it comes to quality of care, and really propel Pearl to an unprecedented degree of profitability and growth, and most importantly, trust. The communities where Pearl Vision is located, our owners and our operators have done an amazing job in really connecting themselves and earning that trust. It was evident during the pandemic. It was evident in the fast recovery and progress through the pandemic. And it's evident in the fact that, the brand today is in the healthiest place it's ever been, being a top 7% brand on Entrepreneur's top 500 list.
You have been noted as, online, and people who talk about you on LinkedIn. I've seen a lot of folks mention, and you mentioned earlier, all of your volunteerism, how you enjoy teaching, your skill as a leader. I'm really curious, was that something that was always kind of innate for you? Is that something that was honed? Like, what's your best career advice on leadership?
No, I didn't start out as a great leader. I was so incredibly focused on, in the early part of my career, on achievement, that it wasn't until later on in my career did I realize that, number one, you could go further faster when you have a group of people that believe in you. Number two, it's a hell of a lot more fun to have that group of people. Getting to the top of the mountain and taking a selfie is not the same thing as getting to the mountain at the top with a group of people and taking a group pic. I had to learn leadership. And I would say through my time at Pearl in the franchise community, I learned how to be a leader. I learned how to really effectively take a group of individuals and galvanize them behind a centralized purpose. Yes, I had other leadership opportunities throughout my career and had a degree of success along the way. But it wasn't until I was forced to lead in what arguably is the most complex ecosystem on the planet, which is franchising, and really transition this brand from where it was to where it is, did I really have to think long and hard about the kind of human being and leadership approach that I wanted to take. And I'm grateful for my colleagues and for those that were on the ride with me for their patience as I got comfortable being a leader. And, today feel very comfortable in the way in which I can move a group forward. It always comes back to an enthusiasm for what you do. Passion is contagious. It's the number one thing I look for when I hire somebody on my team. I can teach you the skill. I can't really give you the will. I can bring it out of you, but you got to be somebody who comes in excited and curious.
Curiosity, fire in the belly, also the most important aspect
For sure.
of successful marketing. I feel like those are sort of the themes, that you hear in talking to other marketers all the time. It's really, you have to have a passion, and you were talking about your dad earlier, and how, when was the moment that you knew like marketing was for you? Because some people get into this industry from really like kind of circuitous route. You got your degree in marketing, but like, was there another path, that you were gonna explore before?
I have 2 degrees in marketing, but I actually didn't know I wanted to be a marketer until I went to the client side. When I made the move from the agency world to Avon, and recognized that I could impact not just the what, but the why. Moving from the agency world to the brand world was an opportunity to influence the decisions that were being made, not just the budget that was being handed out or the brief that was being written. It was the strategy behind it. And what was infectious for me, what got me incredibly excited, was the opportunity to take an idea, create a strategy, and move it from inception to execution. And I was able to do that at Avon, and was blessed to receive Best Executed Launch Strategy from Women's Wear Daily, which I think furthered my excitement that, I could be pretty damn good at this. And that certainly doesn't mean that I haven't had my missteps along the way. But what I learned was that I had an innate ability to kind of combine the art of marketing, which is more than just creative. It's the nuances, along with the science of marketing, which is the numbers and how to read numbers and how to see what the numbers aren't saying, and bring those 2 things together. And if you do it right, with the right group of people around you, most importantly, because it definitely takes a team, you can do amazing things.
And given everything that you've already said, I'm really excited to take you through, our version of the Actor Studio questions. So our podcast speed round, right? I know everybody gets nervous, but then the answers are so awesome. So I want you to, just think off the cuff, off the top of your head. All
right, let me get in the zone.
Yeah, exactly. Right, get in the zone.
All right.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question, then tell me like the word or a couple words that come to mind. So first question, as a marketer, what keeps you up at night?
Fear of missing something that I shouldn't have.
And what keeps you going?
An opportunity to make a difference, not just as a leader, but as a person.
What marketing term do you love?
Bullshit.
That is a marketing term. It gets used a lot. What marketing term do you hate?
Rationale.
Oh, that's a good one. What emoji best describes the current state of marketing?
I think it's the emoji with the sunglasses, because it's a really cool time to be a brand leader. It really, really is.
That's a good one.
I feel like I have to go back on that, marketing term that I hate, rationale. That doesn't mean that I don't believe that you have to have a reason for doing something, but the rationale becomes a crutch for so many people to not think differently.
Totally. Because
there's such a fear of, I don't have the perfect story. I talk about something called the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, if you can get to 80% certainty, you go for it. 20% of the time, you have to be 100% before you go. And that's usually financial.
Yep. Yeah, there's room for gut. You can't be so risk averse, right? I think it goes back to that point you made about vulnerability, which is really important. It's like, as a leader, you have to be vulnerable. As a brand, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, to take risks, The last question is that, age-old debate. I have a feeling about how you're going to answer, but quality or quantity?
Quality.
Awesome.
No question. Quality.
I love it. Yep, got to be. I was just thinking about your equation, right? Like if you nail that,
Yeah.
then, you've got a lot more area to flex with that profitability. So with that, I know everybody like me is excited about the book. Can you please remind folks where they can get it?
Sure. So if the title, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone, a modern day guide to strengthening your brand's value equation, is intriguing, you can go to one of two places. The easiest place is to go to www.dougzarkin.com. There you'll find a little bit more about the book. You can actually, I think, download a free chapter, and there's a link to Amazon. It'll be available on Amazon, both in paperback and on Kindle. And debating on whether I want to do a audio book. I can't imagine. I think nothing that a marketer loves to hear more than the sound of his own voice, but I can't imagine the amount of grief that I would get from my friends if I did an audio book. And certain actors aren't available to do the read for me. So I don't think we'll be doing the audio book, but DougZarkin.com is probably the best place to find it.
Awesome. Do the audiobook. And folks, we will have those details in the show notes for you, just so you can reference them there as well as the links. Doug, thanks so much for joining again.
No, my pleasure. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to Content Disrupted, brought to you by Skyward. Stay up to date on the latest ideas and insights in brand building and content marketing by visiting our website at skyward.com. Join us for our next episode, where we'll continue to challenge marketing norms and inspire you with fresh strategies for growing business through brand storytelling. See you there.